Hey guys, it's Mad Static, and let me just start this one off with appreciation. I appreciate Catwoman being here. Actually, I appreciate all the playable characters in the Arkham games. They aren't just tacked on, they diversify gameplay to the point that Rocksteady could have made entire new games around each of them, which they didn't do for good reasons, I'm sure. But Catwoman specifically switches up things the most. She's a lot faster and more nimble than most of the others. Her silent sprinting makes staying on the ground and stealth much more optimal than swinging between vantage points. She's got a very extravagant moveset with flips and shit. I love her, honestly. Genuinely. Platonically. You know, I just really respect and admire her as an anti-hero and a character in these games in general.
Oh my god, man, that should be me.
She's also the only character besides Batman who you can free roam with in any of these games, and the only character with unique reversal mechanics, like climbing on ceilings and this time pounce grapple thing she does. It's all very nice. Overall, great character, great game. My favorites actually. She kinda sucks though. Basically, she does the most without being able to do too much. When it comes to combat, the objective is to move across the room from person to person, smacking the shit out of enemies using gadgets and special moves and avoiding damage in perfect synchronization. Catwoman never just hits people though. She twirls and then hits someone. She's flipping and then hitting someone. She's doing a roundhouse kick into two other kicks. She's doing a loop-de-loop climb around some guy's body. One button press is a whole dance performance with her, which can be very dangerous for my perfect free flow combo. Now look at the Batman. See how all his movements are quick and necessary. The most efficient way to defend or go on offense. He paralyzes with purpose. Now logically, looking at the combat scenario, scientifically here, I just don't see how kissing Joker here is optimal in the situation. In Arkham City, stun sticks and shields are already weird. I've seen people teleport to hit me with these, their timing's all over the place and the game doesn't like prioritizing them for some reason. Like I'm pressing stun here, why else would I want to stun? Adding Catwoman's slightly longer stun and this weird perching on the shoulders thing she does during her aerial attacks, and you've got the fourth and third things most likely to mess up my free flow down low on the floor. It's not just those. Guns, chairs, throwables, ninjas, anyone and anything with a regular timing is now much harder to make split-second accounts for, including the one-armed brute mini-bosses who, by the way, just love interrupting overly long animations. That's literally like their thing. She takes forever to swing between vantage points, she takes forever to do a blade takedown, and this is everyone besides Batman problem, but why does it take forever for them to do ground takedowns? Up to Arkham Knight, they're almost unusable in the midst of fights with how slow they are. Sometimes, it's not even the slowness that's a problem, it's just their positioning of the move and Catwoman's recovery that will take her somewhere I didn't even ask her to be. This has gotten me started when I really shouldn't have been otherwise, and hit by enemy moves that I couldn't have predicted or accounted for being in the line of. What really makes it all worse though is that she doesn't have the widest array of moves to begin with. This is my other big problem with her. There's just a lot of stuff Catwoman can't do, and she doesn't really have anything super cool to substitute them with. Gadgets are the best example of this. When it comes to the different characters, gadgets are either pretty plentiful or preposterously powerful. Catwoman's are neither. She's got her whip, which is basically her back claw and grapple, the bolas, which are batterings, and the caltrops, which are garbage. I'm being so serious. The caltrops are basically the reason this video exists. You throw a ball of Tic Tacs on the floor. For some reason my autocorrect changed it to Tic Tacos. They'll scatter around and then enemies fall over when they walk by. Simple, right? You're wrong. They have very specific criteria for getting them to actually work properly. Guards need to be both unaware of them and distracted or in a rush, otherwise they'll just skirt them aside or they'll disappear. Still doesn't sound that difficult out loud, but when you're in the moment, trying to plan where to drop these things, of which you only have 3 by the way, you realize that the AI's got some pretty sporadic behavior, pretty unpredictable. Sometimes they're on top of things, but sometimes they'll be cautious and indecisive. Sometimes they'll just stand around worryingly, not doing anything. Sometimes they'll get stuck on stairs and walls. Besides that last example, it's not even a bad thing, but again, these have got to be placed with foresight, and there's no other gadget in these games that requires this much just to function. And for what? It doesn't leave them down any longer than a regular punch does, so you can't even make use of these things unless you're already close by. I could have seen some value in them taking down a group of guys for a longer period than usual, but with a short knockdown time and the ground takedown still taking forever, you're just asking to get a shot going for the knockout. You can just chuck them at dudes, that might work, sometimes, barely ever. They are only ever practical for taking down like one guy, and at that point, what's the point? Now I did kind of find use for them in the heat of combat, can make for some pretty quirky crowd control if you use them right. The timing of the crowd still have to be at a very specific point though, but it's at least more effective than her special whip stun move thingy, another bunch of moves that usually universally suck. Of course she gets one of those, but no disarm and destroy. She's powerful enough to send grown-ass men flying, precise enough to slip through and crack open any security system, but disassembling a gun's a little bit above her pay grade. So if you're playing an endless arena, the guns will probably eventually overwhelm you as you spend most of your time trying to deal with stun sticks and shields. If they don't, well, you're in for a very boring and repetitive process of constantly stunning and jumping over people. You know, I find it pretty funny that most of Catwoman's moves consist of her doing gymnastics on people, but she's the only character in Arkham City who can't piggyback on the Titans. She's the only one! And to be honest, that was something very essential for keeping my chili cheese and steak sub combo going. I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do with this little beatdown thing. In Predator mode, there just aren't a ton of ways that Catwoman can interact with the arena or enemies, leaving silent takedowns and ledge takedowns and ground takedowns to pretty often be your only options. You have a lot of ways to lean into a ground takedown, but you still gotta do the slow-ass ground takedown. Because of the lack of options, the caltrop challenge will be a pretty common requirement, which you can imagine me enjoying immensely. But on extreme maps in Arkham City, you'll have to deal with the armored guards, who you can't silently take down or pounce on or throw bolas at, so you know, that is a remarkable amount of her options gone. Now this video was about to be exclusively for her gameplay in Arkham City, because admittedly, the long animations during combat were actually kinda fixed in Arkham Knight. The faster paced gameplay and character movements almost completely alleviates that issue, which is also pretty funny because it actually makes the second problem so much worse. Enemies in Arkham Knight are just different. They're always doing something like setting up mines, sentry guns, flying drones. Some of them are optically camouflaged. Medics can revive people. They are much quicker to adapt to whatever you are doing. They're still getting stuck on stairs and shit, but other than that, they're on top of things. But with all the new and improved gadgets and mechanics like fear takedowns, the additions to the hacking device, and the reworked grates just to name a few, it makes for some amazing stealth gameplay, the best in the series, my favorite part of the series. Catwoman didn't get shit! Like, everyone has some kind of cool thing to even the odds. Most of the Bat family has the remote hackers and the fear takedowns, Harley has a reliable lure, her mayhem mode is basically a fear takedown, and her cartwheels aren't just for show, they actually dodge bullets. Red Hood has bullets. Actually, I might need like a whole nother video on this dude, he is so fucking busted. But Catwoman is practically untouched from Arkham City, and that honestly causes a lot of problems. Catwoman excels at running around on the ground, and the simpler layouts of cities arenas, mostly being boxes with walkways, work surprisingly well with that in mind. I love the more varied map layouts of Night, but combine that with the revamped enemies and the finicky climbing and jumping and running animations that aren't loose enough to be intuitive parkour systems, and at least you kinda just awkwardly fumbling around and getting stuck and dying. Structure-wise, they're super well designed, and you can appreciate that all the more while on the ground. It's just that staying on the ground isn't really a good idea. The ceiling climbing thing actually would have helped out a lot. That's also another benefit of all the walkways in Arkham City's arenas. But I swear, man, I can only think of like one place in Arkham Knight that lets Catwoman do this anywhere, and it's from her DLC. I don't think anywhere in the main game even has the option for it. Not to mention, they start getting very specific with the challenge medals, straight up irregular. Like, this one stage wants me to disarm 3 shotgun-wielding enemies, which really threw me off, because this is actually the only time in the series I've ever had to focus on the type of gun the goons are using. As far as I'm usually concerned, they all kill me and I play the same regardless. Not to mention, it's really... my fucking cats! It's also really difficult to tell which type of gun each guy has without getting ridiculously close to them. It just doesn't feel like a challenge that the developers ever originally had you doing in mind. And you know what, at the end of the day, I guess that's my real problem with Catwoman. Because in all fairness and frankness, I might have maybe sorta lied a little bit with the title. Azrael barely counts as his own character, so he's definitely the least fun. Along with Arkham Knight's version of Nightwing, who actually suffers from a decrease in options, since his Arkham City version is probably the least functioning character. He is just broken in good and also bad ways. Joker is the king of overly long windups that get me knocked the fuck out, needs to stand still to use his infrared mode, and Harley can't silently take down people because, and I kid you not, she doesn't feel like it.
Quiet ain't in my vocabulary!
Catwoman is definitely not the worst character, by design. The problem is that she's the most unique character in games that really aren't specifically built with her in mind. So much so that I've constantly seen her animations just clip through the environment. I've always loved how much variety is within the movesets of combat and stealth. I can fix it fancy like, or I can stay stupid, it's usually your choice. But Catwoman's kinda stuck with the simplest options, and they're just not ideal when things get more heated. Look at Top of the World Extreme. She can barely maneuver properly on the outside. Inside, there are like 8 dudes shoved in this tiny little circular room. Some of them have armor, some of them can start placing mines, they're doing increased damage, they can see you from across the room because it's so fucking tiny, and Catwoman has to beat them with a whip. Completing the map is just a headache on its own, and then you remember the challenge medals. You've got to leave the jammer for last, so you're blind while outside, and always vulnerable inside. And you've got to use the fucking caltrops! This is definitely the most annoying moment in the series for me. Not the hardest, mind you, just the most irritating. In contrast, let's take a look at the pristine, good Toy Factory map from Arkham Knight. This one's hard to sell too, but this map is top and bottom designed for Catwoman. They make use of her strengths and test her specific weaknesses, making a cramped compartment arena with plenty of small openings to slip through. This and the tiny little vault room from her Arkham City mission are the only 2 areas that feel specifically designed for Catwoman, and the potential for more is crazy. I want you to imagine an Arkham game starting Woman Cat, except on a smaller scale. Instead of a big island or city, it could be like a mall or a mansion, a corporate headquarters, any big ass enclosed area with plenty of places for her to sneakily slip by or make use of her unique traversal. With a smaller area like this, progression in general could be really interesting and more open-ended than usual. It could be more like a Resident Evil game, just letting you explore the place and figure out what the hell you need to do or what you need. Special doors can need like keys within other areas around the place, or it could be like a Metroidvania where you need to find new gadgets and abilities that allow you to progress further, which God knows she needs. Because honestly, I was always kind of worried at the idea of a spin-off Arkham game. I didn't want them to run the formula dry. Like, I like Arkham Origins, but that's what happens when you make another Arkham game instead of the next Arkham game, you know? Now that's how I used to feel. At this point, I will take anything. Literally anything. But I think a game solely built around Catwoman's character, maybe even Harley's or Nightwing's, would be just the mix of the series needs. She's already had her own game before, back in 2004 with a movie tie-in join-a-majigger. She needs redemption. The real point of this video is to complain about the fucking caltrops, but more importantly, I also need to beg someone to make this game.